Restoration has begun in the land of the living.
Shalom and welcome to the Heartland Connection. This is Zach Waller, the Executive Director of Hayovel, your host, coming to you guys straight from the beautiful, exceedingly good Heartland of Israel. Yes, we are back in the land again. The pruning is underway. The guys are out even right now, I believe, just pruning away as I'm recording this. And we've got a really awesome team of guys, more people coming in this week. Guys coming in from all over the place. Got South Africa, a bunch of guys from the States, Canadians, a whole bunch of amazing men of God coming here to take part in this miraculous thing that's happening right here on the mountains of Samaria. Another thing that's coming up next week, I want to give you guys a little heads up on, is a festival called Tu B'Shvat. It's not a Torah, God-given holiday, but it's a holiday that has become quite a festival here in Israel. And basically it's, and it also has a lot of historical meaning as well. But basically it's a time of tree planting. It's like basically called the New Year for the trees. And I would encourage you to go and look that up. There's actually a whole Seder that you can do, like a Passover Seder. There's actually a whole Seder you can do, and it's. I would encourage you to look it up and to do it. It points to a lot of the rebirth that's happening right now in the land of Israel. There's so many scriptures that talk about Israel as a vine, as a fig tree, as an olive tree, and so this festival really points to the renewing, the rebirth, the coming back of the life coming back into the land of Israel. So I encourage you to look that up. One good resource for that would be HebrewForChristians.com. There's a lot of information on there. First Fruits of Zion has a really good Seder, like a Haggadah type of thing. So I would encourage you to look that up, check it out. I think you'd be encouraged and you'd learn a lot. So this week's Torah portion is Beshalach. It's sent out. We have Pharaoh sending out, letting the Israelites go free. We're in Exodus chapter 13, verse 17 through chapter 17. So we have God, says that God led them a little bit different path than what might have been the normal best route to take from Egypt up into the Promised Land, because God knew that if they went that way, that they would meet the Philistines, and then there would be war, and it would not be the best for the people of Israel coming up fresh out of the out of the land of Egypt. We have Joseph's bones being taken out of Egypt. It specifically mentions that Moses is like, hey, let's grab the bones of Joseph and take them to the land of Israel. And as I was reading at this time, I realized, wow, just another really amazing biblical thing here of saying how important the land of Israel is, the physical land of Israel. Like even Joseph's bones couldn't be left in the land of Egypt. They had to be taken up into the land of Israel. And just again pointed out the importance of the physical, literal land of Israel. The people of Israel, the nation of Israel, they could not fulfill their destiny in Egypt. God had to remove them from Egypt and take them into the land of Israel. Israel could have easily, Egypt was destroyed. It was conquered basically. It was totally, there was nothing left of it. Pharaoh was totally taken down as this god that he thought he was. He was, basically totally conquered, and it could have been very easy for Israel to say, hey, Egypt's conquered, they're subdued before us, why don't we just take over Egypt right here? But no, God had to take them out of the land of Egypt into the land of Israel in order for their destiny to be fulfilled, in order for them to fulfill the calling that God had on their lives. And not only this futuristic, thing of, making it to the land, but actual Joseph's bones. He was already dead. He was already gone, wasn't even alive and able to go into the land, but even his bones, it was important for him for his bones to be carried out of Egypt into the land of Israel. And where did they bring them to? We see later on in the book of Joshua, where Joseph's bones were taken and buried in Shechem, which, a lot of people don't realize that this area in Shechem is actually what people today call the West Bank, because this area, which biblically is Judea and Samaria, is the West Bank of the Jordan River. But nowhere in the Bible where you find that term. The West Bank is not used biblically, and I think it's kind of a means that the enemy has used to try to pull people away from the biblical wording so that people don't make those associations. And it's the reality. A lot of people hear West Bank and they don't think about Shechem, this place where Joseph's bones were buried, and that valley right there in Shechem where the bones are, where even today you can go and see Joseph's tomb. Right around, there's these mountains right around. You have Elon Moreh. Where in Genesis 12, Abraham, is called by God to leave his father and mother from his family and from the place where he lived, go into the land of Israel. He comes to Elon Moreh in the land of Israel, and God says, "This is the land I'm going to give to you and your descendants." This location is right in what people call the West Bank. Just on the hill on the other side of the valley is the Mount of Blessing and the Mount of Cursing, where when the children of Israel came into the land, after the whole experience out in the wilderness, in the desert, they come into the land of Israel and go right up to these two mountains, and half the tribes go up on one mountain, half the tribes on the other, and Joshua and the priests, they read the blessings and the curses, and all of Israel says Amen all together. And basically I've heard Jewish people call that basically the ketubah, right? It was like they're getting married to the land of Israel. It's like this covenant being made between the people and the land. So this happened right there, right beside where Joseph's tomb was, right beside the plot of land that Jacob bought when he came into the land of Israel, right beside Elon Moreh, where God spoke to Abraham. All this stuff right there in this same location. And a lot of people don't realize that the so-called West Bank is where 80 to 85% of the Bible was actually written or took place right here in this area. And that's why we call it the Heartland of Israel, because this is the biblical heartland. This is where the Bible took place. This is where the scriptural things happen. This is where God promised the Jewish people that this land is theirs. It belongs to them. God made a covenant with his people, and it's literal, it's physical, so literal and physical that Joseph wanted his bones to be taken out of Egypt into this physical, literal place. And Moses in this Torah portion is making good on that promise and taking his bones out of the land of Egypt into this place. So I just want to make that super clear. As I'm trying to help you guys connect, I'm sitting here on the Mount of Blessing right next to Shechem, where Joseph's bones were buried. And I just want to help you guys realize how real this is. Like, I'm sitting right here in this spot, and I'm like, wow, so many people don't realize that, when they hear West Bank, they're talking about where Joseph's bones are buried. They're talking about where God promised Abraham, this is the land I'm going to give to you and your descendants forever. This is the place where Joshua brought the children of Israel, and they made covenant with the land right here. This is, Beit El, where God made a covenant with Jacob, all right? Where Jacob said, hey, I'm going to promise to give you a tenth, and I'm going to build, the temple, basically, where Shiloh, where the tabernacle was for 369 years, Hebron, where the cave of Machpelah, where the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. These places, they're all in the so-called West Bank. So when you hear West Bank, don't think of something disconnected from the Bible. Don't think of something disconnected from Israel. This is the heartland of Israel that people are talking about when they use that term. And biblically, of course, it's called Judea and Samaria, which obviously is the term that us Bible-believing, God-loving people like to use. So whenever you hear West Bank, make sure you understand what's really being talked about. So next we have kind of an interesting thing here. We have Hashem, we have God giving Moses kind of a warning, basically, before Pharaoh comes up behind them. And it's kind of interesting here, though, because it doesn't actually say exactly what God's going to do. It just says hey, Moses, tell the children of Israel to move into this certain location, and Pharaoh's army is going to come up behind you, and I'm going to show you my glory. And from what I understand, if you look at this location, it's kind of crazy because there's like these huge cliffs on the one side, like big jagged mountains, and then on the other side is the Red Sea. And so they're like this is seriously a trap. And so I can just imagine being Moses, and all of a sudden God saying, hey, Pharaoh's coming up behind you, and so what I want you to do is move right down in this spot where you're going to be totally trapped. There's no way out. There's mountains and cliffs on one side, and there's the Red Sea on the other side. You're totally trapped. So our plan is move the children of Israel. Tell the children of Israel, go down to this spot, and Pharaoh's army is going to come behind you, and I'm going to show you my glory. And all of Egypt will know that I am God. I was like, okay, here we go. Children of Israel, move down in this trap. This is the plan. And then there's like not really any further instruction, like what are we supposed to do? And then we even see, where Moses, the children of Israel are like, hey, they're panicking. They're like, what's going on here? What are we supposed to do? Pharaoh's army is coming up here. What did you just bring us out here to kill us all? Were there no graves in Egypt? They're like, what's going on here? And Moshe's like, stand still and see the salvation of God. Just pray, and you're gonna see mighty things today. And so we see like Moshe is crying out to God, and the children of Israel crying out. They're like, what's going on here? And all of a sudden God's like, hey, why are you crying out to me? Move forward. Okay, so there's cliffs and jagged mountains and the Red Sea, and God says, move forward. And like that's the first time, as far as we know, that Moshe finds out, oh, there's not going to be some sort of other plague or something where God's just going to wipe out Pharaoh's army right here. He actually wants us to move forward. So, okay, into the Red Sea. Here we go. And they say, based on some of the scriptures in the Hebrew wording in here, that the children of Israel actually had to step into the sea before it split. It wasn't like it just split open and the children of Israel were able to walk through. God says, move forward. Moshe says, move forward. He's using his staff, and the children of Israel actually stepped into the water. And it says they're possibly the Jewish people's, their tradition says that they were probably all the way up to like their nose before the sea actually split open, and it's based off some of the wording here in the Torah. But just some of the faith of these children of Israel. They're like, okay, here we go. Is pretty amazing, and just this picture of Moses' faith too, and believing and knowing that he's hearing God correctly and taking the proper steps to move forward. And it really spoke to me because here we have this situation, and I think many of us are in the situation where we feel like God has given us direction, and we know that He's asking us to do something, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to us, and we're like, is this really what I'm supposed to do? And then God's like, stop praying, stop waiting, and move forward. And I heard somebody once say that if you're not moving, that God can't direct you. If you're just sitting still, then there's no way for God to direct your path. You have to move in order for God to direct which way you need to go. And I also heard an analogy once that it's kind of like riding a bicycle. As long as you're moving, then God can, you can steer it. But as soon as you stop, you're going to fall. And so in these type situations, God's just like, hey, why are you crying out to me? Move forward. And so that's what I was encouraged reading this, and I hope you are, that, there's those times when you just have to take that step, even if it looks like you're totally trapped, even if it looks like this doesn't make any sense at all. Take the step forward and have faith and believe, and God will always be there to see you through. So this Red Sea is split open. We have the song at the sea once they're all through. The Egyptians and their army is drowned, and then we have the song at the sea. We have Moses' song that he sings, the Song of Moses. And this is a very special song, a huge deal in many in the Jewish circles and Christian circles. It's actually the Jewish people, the Orthodox Jews, pray this song every day in their synagogues. And also for us believers in Yeshua, we know in the New Testament, in Revelation chapter 15, verse 2, it says, and I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who had overcome the beast and his image and the number of his name standing by the sea of glass, holding the harps of God, and they are singing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. So even in heaven, they're having this heavenly revelation, and even in heaven, they're singing this song of Moses, this victory, this salvation song. So this is a very, very important piece of Scripture, very something to certainly pay attention to and dig into, and has been, the victory song, the salvation song. If there's any picture of salvation, it's this crossing of the Red Sea. I mean, basically, the children of Israel are dead, right? The whole army of Pharaoh, right there, they're trapped between these mountains, these cliffs, and the Red Sea. They are dead. There's no way out at this point. And all of a sudden, boom, the sea divides, and they're able to walk through on dry land, and then the enemies are defeated. I mean, this is such a huge picture of God and His salvation to His people, and we have experienced that. We're at a place before accepting God and His love for us. We were at a place where we deserved death. Our sin, our fleshly desires and stuff, we were deserving of death. We were sinners, but all of a sudden God's like, no, there's a way, and divides the sea for us in order for us to come into Him and to enter into His love and His mercy. And so this is such a huge visual picture of that experience of receiving salvation, of being set free and redeemed, even if we don't deserve it, whatever. But God has made a way for us to be delivered from our enemies and to find salvation in Him. Then we have the women picking up their timbrels, their tambourines, and dancing. And it's kind of interesting here, actually. The word for tambourine is usually translated tambourine. In Hebrew is actually toph, which everywhere else in the Bible is actually translated as drum. And in this translation, I have the Art Scroll Tanakh here. It actually says that the women went out with their drums and dancing. So it's a little bit different picture. A lot of times I think we see paintings, or the idea we have in our mind is Miriam jumping out there with her tambourine and just dancing around, and kind of an individual thing. But actually, probably more accurately, obviously, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but based on studies and stuff that I've done on music, which I've done quite a bit of that, probably what happened here is Miriam actually got a drum and started with a beat. In order to dance, you have to have a beat to dance to. And so, in order for more than one person, for it to be a collective thing, you have to have some sort of beat going so that everybody can be on the same page and everybody can be on the same beat and dancing all together. So probably more like what happened is Miriam starts singing, gets all the ladies together singing, and then starts banging away on some sort of bongo type thing, and so that everybody can all dance together. And it was probably more like, mimes or some sort of, what we call Davidic dance or whatever nowadays, where everybody's all doing the same dance together in this trying to express their appreciation to God for His salvation. And so just a little thing there on the Hebrew, like it literally says Miriam and the women took up their drums and began to dance and sing. I was reading a really interesting article. It was talking about this whole thing about music and singing, and it was pretty interesting because it's saying after you experience salvation, one of the things that it's just natural to do is to sing. Like singing, it helps us express what our soul is feeling, what we're experiencing. And this article I found on Chabad.com I thought was very, very interesting. He was talking about this song and music, and this Shabbat is actually called Shabbat Shira, which is like the Shabbat of song. And so because of this Torah portion, and this article I was reading had a couple of really interesting quotes. One by Arnold Bennett, and he said that music is a language which the soul alone understands, but which the soul can never translate. And another quote was, the music is, words are the language of the mind. Music is the language of the soul. And another guy said, called it song and music the shorthand of emotion. And so the article says, so when we seek to express or evoke emotion, we turn to melody. Deborah sang after Israel's victory over the forces of Sisera. Hannah sang when she had a child. When Saul was depressed, David would play for him and his spirit would be restored. David himself was known as the sweet singer of Israel. Elisha called for a harpist to play so that the prophetic spirit could rest upon him. And the Levites sang in the temple. Every day in Judaism, we preface our morning prayers with the Psuke de Zimra, the verses of song, with their magnificent crescendo, Psalm 150, in which instruments and the human voice combine to sing God's praises. So here we have lots of biblical examples of singing and music. The article continues, no creature ever uttered a more beautiful song to God than this one, talking about the Song of Moses. The song is therefore beloved to Israel. They recite it daily, and they read it from the Torah publicly on one Shabbat each year, and on the seventh day of Pesach, when we commemorate the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea, with a special melody and with great rejoicing. Some follow the custom of standing when it's read. Special honor is accorded this Shabbat, and it is crowned by a special name, Shabbat Shira. So this is really interesting, just talking about music and how these different biblical characters use it. And I think maybe one big question, especially amongst more conservative type circles, and I growing up, around a lot of the more Amish Mennonite type people, it's like the question is kind of is emotion okay? Is it okay to be to let yourselves be emotional? And I think there's kind of this maybe monkish type mentality that as much as we can suppress any kind of emotion, any kind of feeling, the better. But I think if we look at what does God do, how does He express Himself, and if we're supposed to be in His image and walking according to His ways, what does He do? What has Yeshua done? And I think if we look at that a little bit, we might find something kind of surprising. And when we look at Mount Sinai, we're going to be reading about that pretty soon in this Torah portion. We have thunders and lightning and smoke and blasts of the shofar. I mean, talk about emotion, talk about drama, this is like the most incredible experience ever. The mountains quaking and then the voice of God and, writing with His finger to these 10 commandments. I mean, talk about emotion. This is like incredible. And then, even in the New Testament, the book of Revelation, you have this whole, heavenly picture with a sea of glass and these, different things, seeing these different creatures. I mean, this is serious emotion, serious, dramatic, different things happening. And even like the whole biblical narrative, and then Yeshua giving His life on the cross and then rising from the dead and then ascending up to heaven. I mean, we have so many biblical stories that are just packed full of emotion. Flutes shaking the ground with I think it was King Solomon, maybe when the first temple was inaugurated. I think that was when it was. Even with instruments, we have Psalm 150 talks about praising Him with loud crashing cymbals. So I think maybe we need to kind of rethink this whole thing about not having emotion. I think we just need to think through what what kind of emotion is good. I think we've had a bad taste in our mouth because a lot of music maybe has produced sensual, lustful things, and maybe that's a good filter within music is what does it produce? What does it make you do? Does it make you want to worship, or does it make you want to do sensual, and does it stimulate lustful things? So I think these are things we need to consider and to concentrate on being able to worship God, to follow after Him with all that we have. All right, so I guess that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening, and Shabbat Shalom from the beautiful, exceedingly good land of Israel.
New life has come.